Seoul shimmered under the cold late autumn sky as the press gathered outside the luxurious Cheongdam-dong Media Hall for Song Joong-ki's long-awaited public appearance. It was supposed to be an ordinary press conference for his upcoming project, nothing more than a formal event, polished, rehearsed, and predictable. Yet the air carried a tension that felt strangely electric, as if the city itself was waiting for something to slip, something to break, something to reveal what the public had long whispered about but never dared to fully articulate. Reporters crowded into the lobby of the venue, their cameras flashing like staccato lightning, each one hoping to capture the tiniest shift in his expression. Because when Song Joong-ki stood before the microphone, he wasn't just promoting a film, he was stepping into a battlefield of questions that had shadowed him for years. Inside the grand ballroom of the Park Hyatt Seoul, the event began with the usual choreography, scripted greetings, gentle smiles, orchestrated interactions. But anyone who had followed his career closely recognized a pattern that repeated throughout every public appearance since his very public split from Song Hye-kyo. No matter how light or indirect the question, no matter how gently it was framed, any mention of her name would freeze the slightly warm atmosphere around him. And today, as reporters sensed an opportunity they had been denied countless times, the room felt poised to erupt the moment someone dared to step across that invisible line. It happened faster than expected. A veteran journalist from a major Korean outlet raised her hand, smiling politely but with an unmistakable glint of determination in her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried effortlessly through the crisp audio system of the ballroom. Joong-ki SSI, she began softly. Many fans still recall the emotional journey you and Ms. Song Hye-kyo went through together. Is there anything you would like to share now, looking back? The moment the question landed, the atmosphere shattered. The soft murmurs from the crowd ceased. Every person in the hall turned their eyes to the stage, breath held in unison. Song Joong-ki's expression faltered, not dramatically, just enough for those watching him closely to feel something tremble beneath the surface. His gaze lowered for a moment, his lips pressed together, and instead of offering even the simplest, safest answer, he shifted slightly toward his manager, almost as if he needed an anchor. The manager stepped forward instantly, the way someone might move to catch a falling glass before it broke. Please refrain from personal questions, he announced firmly. Let's keep the focus on the project. He forced a smile, but his tone left no room for negotiation. Within seconds, the events mic jumped in to redirect the conversation, and the press, despite restless frustration, had no choice but to move on. Still, the damage was done. What should have been a neutral, carefully orchestrated press conference had suddenly turned into a national talking point. Social media exploded with comments dissecting his reaction frame by frame. Why did he look so tense? Why did he avoid answering? Why was the manager so quick, almost too quick, to intervene? Even hours after the conference ended, articles with titles such as Song Joong-ki's brief silence sends internet into frenzy and why he refuses to speak about Song Hye-kyo dominated trending searches. It wasn't the first time this had happened, but somehow, this moment, in this ballroom, intensified the mystery even further. Later that week, at a quiet cafe tucked away in Hamgyong, where entertainment insiders frequently meet off-record, a former staff member from the production team of Descendants of the Sun agreed to speak on the condition of anonymity. The cafe, dimly lit with warm amber lights, had that intimate atmosphere favored by industry people wary of public attention. Between sips of lukewarm Americano, the staffer revealed what many long suspected but had never heard so directly. People think they know everything just because they watch them on screen, the staffer said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. But the truth is, what they shared behind the camera was far more complicated, far more tender, far more real than what the public ever saw. According to this insider, there were countless moments on set, particularly during late-night shoots inside the KBS Annex building in Yeouido, where the two stars would slip away for brief conversations, sharing quiet words that even the staff couldn't fully decipher. They weren't dramatic or heated. Instead, they carried a kind of quiet sincerity that set them apart. Everyone on the set could feel something, the staffer recalled. There were these looks, gentle, careful. They treated each other with a level of consideration that isn't common, even among co-stars who get along well. But everything changed after the public fallout and the sudden shift that followed. The industry whisper was that there were unresolved emotions and unspoken promises, little fragments of a story that never made it to the headlines. And it was these fragments, according to the insider, that could explain why Joong-ki chose silence instead of speaking even a single careless word. One stylist, who had worked with him during a photoshoot at the Studio Santa Claus Entertainment Building, described an incident that left a deep impression. The downtime between shots. Another staff member casually mentioned Song Hye-kyo's recent activity. The room fell silent for a split second, an invisible tension floating in the air. Joong-ki didn't react angrily nor did he appear irritated. Instead, he offered a small, rueful smile, kind that seemed to hold 100 unspoken memories. Didn't say anything, the stylist said. But you could feel that the silence meant something. Something important. As part of the investigation into why he consistently avoided related questions, journalists began reviewing footage from various public events over the last few years. Their analysis revealed a clear pattern. At the Busan International Film Festival, he avoided a reporter's question with a polite bow. At Incheon Airport, cornered by cameras and asked about her, he lightly touched the brim of his cap and walked away without a word. During a JTBC interview, a segment mentioning her name was reportedly edited out at his request, not out of hostility, but out of something quieter, gentler. The whispers grew louder when a senior insider, a well-connected figure with years of experience handling top celebrities, shared a detail that had never made its way to the public. According to this person, during the Busan International Film Festival, been a moment backstage when Joong-ki nearly answered a question about Song Hye-kyo during a closed-door press roundtable. He wanted to say something. Insider confessed. He opened his mouth. He looked like he was finally going to clear the air once and for all, but someone from the team put a gentle hand on his arm and shook their head. And just like that, he stayed silent again. Asked whether this was a deliberate strategy, the insider hesitated before replying. There are agreements, understandings, boundaries between all parties involved. Some of it is formal. Some of it is emotional. But he's not silent because he doesn't care. He's silent because he cares too much. The truth behind Song Joong-ki's silence did not fully emerge until weeks after the press conference, when a seasoned journalist from the Namdaemun Press Center agreed to share a confidential account that had been buried beneath years of industry discretion. Sitting in his cramped but meticulously organized office, surrounded by stacks of unpublished notes and photos, he leaned back in his chair and sighed before speaking. It wasn't that he didn't want to talk, he said. It was that he believed saying anything at all would only make things harder for both of them. This journalist, who had covered their relationship from the early descendants of the Sundays to the tumultuous months that followed their separation, revealed that he had once been in possession of a draft interview transcript that never saw the light of day. The transcript, recorded in a private studio setting at the JTBC headquarters, contained a segment where Joong-ki paused for nearly a full minute when asked if he had anything he wished he could say to Song Hye-kyo. It wasn't the question itself that halted him, it was the flood of memories behind it. When he finally spoke, he said only, "Some stories deserve to be preserved quietly." That entire section was ultimately cut before the interview aired. Why? Why preserve quietness? Why protect silence so fiercely? An unexpected answer came from a circle of people who had worked closely with both stars during their respective career transitions. One of them, a former manager who briefly worked under Blossom Entertainment, chose to break the silence during a late-night meeting at a modest restaurant in Mangwon-dong. The aroma of grilled meat filled the air as he leaned forward and spoke in a tone that hovered between confession and regret. He wasn't avoiding her, the manager said, resting his chopsticks on the table. He was protecting her. He believed that anything he said, no matter how gentle, would be twisted by the media or lead to more unnecessary pain. According to him, Song Hye-kyo had gone through a particularly difficult period after their separation, retreating into a quiet home in Hanam-dong for nearly a year. She traveled minimally, spoke to few people, surrounded herself only with her closest friends and staff. During that time, Joong-ki heard through mutual acquaintances that the overwhelming media attention surrounding her was more exhausting than people realized. He knew she needed peace, the manager said. He decided he wouldn't be the reason she lost it. This belief, this insistence on avoiding any public comment to prevent fueling speculation, became the unspoken foundation of his silence. It explained the careful looks, the polite nods, the avoidance of any prolonged answer. And it also explained why he often appeared contemplative or even somber whenever her name came up unexpectedly. Another layer of the story surfaced when an overseas staff member who had accompanied Joong-ki during a commercial shoot in Rome recounted a moment that had been locked away in her memory for years. The shoot took place near Castel Sant'Angelo, where golden evening sunlight spilled across the ancient stone bridge. During a break, an Italian journalist approached him with a polite smile and casually asked about his past with Song Hye-kyo. Instead of responding with irritation or deflection, Joong-ki looked out toward the Tiber River, voice barely audible when he said, "Not today, please." After that, he walked toward the far end of the bridge and stood alone for several minutes. The staffer remembered the way he looked that afternoon, not angry, not defensive, but quietly wounded. The words themselves were too fragile for what he felt. In Korea, a makeup artist who had worked with him at the CJENM Center in Sangam-dong shared another telling moment. While preparing him for a television appearance, commented on the intensity of media questions surrounding his personal life. Joong-ki, with a weary but sincere smile, simply replied, "If I speak, people will twist it. If I stay quiet, maybe she won't be hurt." The makeup artist recalled that he said it softly, almost to himself, as if confessing a truth he had carried alone for years. Fragmented testimonies, collected from Rome to Yeouido to Hanam-dong, a picture more profound and painful than the public had ever imagined. Behind the glamorous veneer of celebrity life is a man wrestling with memories, boundaries, quiet sense of responsibility. There was a woman rebuilding her life away from the harsh glare of public scrutiny. And there was a truth suspended between them, unspoken, but undeniable. One of the most emotional accounts came from a senior staff member who accompanied Joong-ki during a filming trip to Jeju Island. After a long day of shooting, the team gathered near the coast to enjoy a meal together. The sound of waves crashing against the black volcanic rocks echoed across the shoreline. At some point, someone mentioned a recent interview Song Hye-kyo had done for a magazine where she spoke about personal growth. The staff member saw Joong-ki lift his gaze toward the vast ocean. He didn't say a word. He just watched the horizon in silence, his expression softening into something that resembled longing or regret. It was difficult to decipher. But the staff member said, "I could tell from the way he looked at the sea that his heart was still tied to certain memories." Bit by bit, insiders began to fill in the missing pieces. The overwhelming consensus was that Joong-ki's silence was his way of honoring the past without reopening old wounds. He didn't want public interpretation, misunderstanding, or speculation to contaminate something that had once been meaningful and deeply personal. And he certainly didn't want to cause Song Hye-kyo further distress by unintentionally stirring up controversy. Yet it wasn't just about her. It was also something he was protecting within himself. One source described it perfectly during a late-night phone call. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's love. Sometimes it's both. In the entertainment world, where scandals sell quicker than truth, where emotions are constantly magnified, where every word is dissected endlessly, silence becomes its own kind of language. A quiet rebellion against a narrative imposed from outside. Sanctuary carved out of public chaos. And for Joong-ki, silence became the only way he felt he could preserve what remained unbroken. The emotional climax of the story arrived when the senior journalist from Namdaemun Press Center revealed one final piece of information he had withheld for years. He shared that, shortly after the divorce became public, he attempted to request a personal comment from Joong-ki, not for publication, but off the record. The actor declined, but he added a single line that the journalist had never forgotten: "I hope she heals faster than the world expects." Those words were never printed anywhere. Yet they encapsulated the true heart of the matter. His silence wasn't coldness and indifference. It was the last act of consideration he could offer. A gesture of sincerity towards someone he once cared for deeply. As the dust settles on years of speculation and unanswered questions, one truth emerges with striking clarity: behind Song Joong-ki's silence lies a profound sense of respect, both for a shared past and for the woman who lived it with him. His refusal to speak wasn't a refusal to feel. Instead, it was a deliberate decision to protect what little remained untouched by the public eye. Today, both stars have moved forward in their own ways. Song Joong-ki has embraced a new chapter of life, exploring new roles and new responsibilities. Song Hye-kyo has reached new artistic heights, captivating audiences with performances that reveal her emotional depth more powerfully than ever. They have walked separate paths, yet the echoes of their shared history still linger gently in the background of their stories. And so, the reason behind his silence becomes not a mystery, but a quiet testament. He chose not to comment because some memories, some emotions, some relationships deserve peace, not headlines. His silence was not avoidance. It was understanding. It was compassion. It is the last form of kindness he could give. In the end, the untold story of Song Joong-ki's silence reveals something rare in the world of fame, a heart that chose restraint over spectacle, respect over drama, and dignity over noise. A truth far more tender than the public ever imagined, and far more beautiful in its simplicity.